The Orlando Magic season ends in frustration. The game we didn't get, the game we hoped we would get, and the game we actually got. It wasn't pretty tonight on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 30th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. Now, just completing my 15th season covering the Orlando Magic. I don't know how to count anymore. I was told there would be no math. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic had everything in line to force a Game 6 and extend this series, and then foul trouble hit, and the Magic's fatal flaws came back to the surface. How the Boston Celtics finally broke the dam of the Magic's defense, and how frustration, limitations, ended the Magic season. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We appreciate all of our everyday listeners, and especially our first listeners of the day. For your first listener of the day, we truly appreciate it. John, I see you back there. Quit partying. We're gonna get to this later. We're gonna get to this later. If you're watching on YouTube, John Corrales just danced like a maniac behind me. On to I forget where I'm at. Locked on Magic, Locked on NBA, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Orlando Magic, as we discussed yesterday with John Corrales, had the game plan in this series. They understood and knew how to get under the Celtics' skin. They knew how to kind of keep them from the things they like to do, to make them uncomfortable, to put them in tight spaces. If we'll do the complete autopsy of this season tomorrow. Exit interviews are going to be Thursday, so we get to like take a breath before we put a bow on this season. But the Magic had the game plan, and they executed it to perfection in that first half. Yeah, Boston was making some interior shots, but they were turning the ball over. They weren't getting three-pointers. I believe they only had 6 three-pointers at halftime, and they missed all 6. The Magic had the Celtics, as John put it very well yesterday, and I repeated it back to him at halftime, had them seeing ghosts. They were unsure of themselves. This series, and again, we'll do full autopsy later. Today is not the day to do full autopsy because how this game ultimately played out robbed us of the kind of game that we want to see. And look, the Magic left opportunities on the table in the first half. The Magic should have been up by double digits in the first half. They created the turnovers. They forced Boston into shots they didn't want to take. Orlando got pretty good shots throughout the entire first half. And as has been the story all season long, those shots just refused to go in. The opportunities, the turnovers that the Magic created, the second chance opportunities, all those margin plays that both Joe Mazzulla and Jamal Mosley said went the Magic's way, and they left points on the board. And that is what leads to catastrophe. And in the first 3 minutes of the third quarter, catastrophe struck. Now, we can debate whether or not Paolo Banchero should have been called for any of or all 3 of those fouls that he was called for in the first 3 minutes of the game, of the second half. He went through Derek White. That was probably an offensive foul. He bumped Jason Tatum. Objectively, probably a foul. Whether it's a foul in this series is a fair thing to ask because that's been inconsistent. On the Jaylen Brown play, on the play where he picked up his 5th foul of the game, Paolo Banchero was playing physical defense. He got to the spot, and Brown initiated contact, put his elbows up, and got him in the head. But ultimately, the refs looked at the tape, reviewed the call, and said it was a foul on Paolo Banchero. He was late to the spot, bumped Brown, knocked him off course. That's a foul. We can't We can argue about the validity of those fouls. We can argue whether those were the right calls. It doesn't matter anymore. As frustrated as the Magic were in the moment, and they had every right to be frustrated with the calls because this has been a physical series, and all of a sudden, that's a foul. And again, probably definitionally was. Just, it hasn't been in this series. But undoubtedly, that changed the whole game. Jaylen Brown went to the foul line, tied the game, or gave the Celtics their first lead of the second half, and they did not look back. And so a game that the Magic had control over, a game that the Magic were dominating is a far cry because, again, the margin for error is just so small. Even when the Celtics are playing poorly, they're in the game. Orlando could never run and hide from them. This play changed the game completely. All of a sudden, Paolo Banchero had to sit. All of a sudden, the Magic had lost one of their offensive engines. All of a sudden, all the onus, all the responsibility was put on Franz Wagner. And all of a sudden, the Magic had to play hands-free. They had to change their defense because of what was now being called a foul. And this is the thing about Boston. We can say what we want about the foul situation. We can say what we want about the discrepancy of calls throughout the course of the series. Boston will always make you pay for your mistakes. If you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And they may not take a full mile on this Magic defense. It may only be a half mile. It may only be a quarter mile. But that is enough, especially when the Magic are missing their offensive engine. Franz Wagner did his best. But just like Paolo in Game 4 and really throughout Game 5, we'll get to the box score. I'll talk about why Paolo didn't actually have a great game. Franz Wagner ran out of gas. Not an excuse, but started settling for jumpers. Wasn't able to get to the basket as efficiently, as consistently. And eventually, the Celtics just make you pay. They just hurt you. They just harm you. They don't let up. They don't lose their cool, which the Magic clearly had. And the Magic, because they couldn't take advantage of mistakes in the first half and couldn't take advantage of the good looks they got in the second half, just wore down. At the end of the day, the reason why the season is over tonight is the Magic's fatal flaw. They don't have enough shooting. They could not make enough open shots. Whether it was Jonathan Isaac airballing a three from the corner, whether it was Anthony Black passing up and hesitating on a three-pointer, whether it was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope missing a three-pointer off an offensive rebound, whether it was, you can name any number of shots. Wendell Carter missed a couple threes. Franz Wagner settled for a three, a pull-up three that isn't a bad shot, but isn't going to get the job done unless you make it. And Boston made those shots in the second half. Boston ended the game 13 of 24 from three, which means they were 13 for 18 in the second half. The dam finally broke. And as is the case in these games, the rope started sliding and the Magic couldn't grab it back. What's disappointing about this game, it's not necessarily that they lost, and it's not even necessarily that they lost by the amount that they did, because the Magic played to the end. They played their butts off. They worked hard in this game, and they just didn't have the horses to get to the end. Plain and simple. They didn't have the horses to keep up with the Celtics, and we knew that when we entered the series. We knew that at the beginning of this series. And that's what played out in Game 5. Orlando needed to make shots to stay in the series. They needed to compete with the Celtics at the three-point line. In the end, Orlando shot 8 for 38 from three. In the end, Orlando shot 37.5% from the floor. You're not beating this Boston Celtics defense no matter how good your defense is. You're not beating this Boston Celtics team if you're not making shots. And that's been the story all season. Orlando could get the best looks in the world, and you're never confident they're going to make them. If Boston got the looks Orlando got tonight in the first half, they'd be up by 25. Orlando would kill to be up by 15. And that's the difference right now. And look, it's the offseason now. I promised we would talk offseason stuff. Exit interviews are Thursday. We will get to offseason stuff. It's abundantly clear what needs to happen and the direction the Magic need to go next. We're not hiding from it, and it's the story of this game. take away one of the Magic's creative offensive engines, the margin for error gets smaller, and the Magic aren't able to take advantage of the mistakes and the miscues that they create. Plain and simple. Now, with Paolo's fouls, it would have changed the game. If Paolo was playing in that second half, the Magic have a shot because they're playing really well. They played about as perfect the first half as you can play against Boston Celtics without making shots. And that's just been the common refrain. We can win without making shots. That's what they told us after the game. We were leading despite missing shots. That's not how this works. Not at this level, not in these games, not with these stakes. At long last in this series, the shooting dam broke. And the Celtics came rushing in, flooding the Magic and ending their season. What Boston did to finally break through, we're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at CarGurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why I love using CarGurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With more than 4 million listings, CarGurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. Need a deal you can trust? CarGurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. The best feature? Their price drop alerts, so you know exactly when the perfect car is available in your budget. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details give you the peace of mind before stepping onto any lot. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus.com, CarGurus, CarGurus.com. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at WayFair. Spring is here, and that means it's home project season. Whether you're refreshing your room or tackling a full renovation, WayFair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting, WayFair has quality products for every budget. Their free and fast shipping makes it so easy. There's no hauling heavy items from the store. I love that they have top brands like GE and Moen at great prices, and shopping is seamless. You find exactly what you need to fit your space and style. WayFair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WayFair, WayFair. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. So I haven't listened to what the Boston Celtics had to say. Listen to our friend John Krallis on Locked On Celtics. He is slaving away on his written work right now as I'm recording this. He'll have the pod up very, very soon, and I will make fun of him endlessly for that. But check out Locked On Celtics again throughout the rest of the playoffs. We're hoping the best for them because it's always better to lose to the champs, I feel like. And I'm sure Boston will say they learned a lot from this series because Orlando's defense, the numbers may not support it. Orlando's defense was very good in this series. They made Boston sweat and work for every point and every inch in this series. It was a low possession series. The Celtics had to rely on things that they're not used to relying on. They had to be a little uncomfortable in the series. And while it is a 5-game series, the Celtics, I think, really, really come out of this knowing a little bit something different about themselves. Whether they're playing Detroit or New York, and Detroit plays a very similar defensive style to Orlando. A lot of hitting, a lot of grabbing, a lot of just rough and tumble play. If they end up playing like Oklahoma City in the finals, Oklahoma City plays a very similar style of defense as well. So this is not going to be the last time the Celtics are going to have to rely on something besides their three-point shooting. And to see them rely on their defense, number one, but rely on something beyond their three-point shooting is going to help them in the long run. The Magic deserve a lot of credit in this game because throughout the series, Joe Mazzulla has said the game's going to come down to the margins. It's going to come down to who gets extra possessions, who gets the rebounds, who gets the turnovers, who gets the free throws. All of these little things that don't always show up on the box score as important, but you feel their importance throughout the course of the game. Jamal Mosley has echoed that sentiment. And throughout the first half, and again, if you look, and we'll go through the box score number here in a minute, but when you look at this game throughout the first half, Orlando was winning all of these things. That honestly, like, that's what's disappointing to me, is it really did feel like the Magic won all those hidden points. They won the margins in this game. They won offensive rebound. They got 15 offensive rebounds to Boston's 3. They dominated the glass. They got 15 second chance points to Boston's 3. That's taking care of business. That's taking care of what you're supposed to take care of on the offensive glass, which the Magic haven't always done in this series. It's getting 12 points off 11 turnovers. A lot of them coming in the first half. Boston did a much better job protecting the ball. Orlando didn't. Boston had 20 points off 12 turnovers, but the Magic were in control of that category for much of the game. 13 fast break points to Boston's 11. Again, a lot of it probably more in the first half. Orlando's offense got stuck in a rut. Boston made their shots, all that stuff. But the Magic won a lot of these categories. They won so many of these things that they have to win. Again, missing free throws, 15 for 22, about the only thing you can complain about. Just a lot of split free throws throughout the course of the game. Boston did get the line for 24 free throws. They made their 21. These things do matter in the end, but Orlando felt like they were the team that was hustling the most. And again, you see that in how they defended the three-point line through much of the series and how they took Boston off the three-point line. But inevitably, we always knew it was going to come. We always suspected there would be a game that ended like this, where the Celtics made shots and it was just so overwhelming for the Magic that they couldn't make up for it. Throughout the course of the series, I've talked about the raw number. It's a math problem with Boston, that Orlando had to keep Boston's three-point makes down. Forget the percentage. The three-point makes down to a number that they could catch up. If they made 10, Orlando can make 9 threes. If Boston made 9 and 8 threes, I think they made 17 threes over games 3 and 4. If Boston makes 15, 16 threes, if they make what they make this game, they were 13 for 24 in this game against Orlando's 8. That's tough for Orlando to make up. And again, Orlando just could not find the shots. There was a point in the press conference where, Jamal Mosley was asked if he thought about taking a timeout as Boston was building their run and starting to build their lead and build momentum. And Jamal Mosley frankly said, if I thought we weren't getting good looks, I would have called the timeout. But we were getting good looks and they just weren't going down. At the end of the day, yes, Paolo's absence hurt. And it was consequential. It changed the game. At the end of the day, this series came down to shooting. It came down to the Magic weren't able to make enough shots to stay ahead of Boston, to get over the hump when they were trailing Boston, to extend a lead from 5 to 12 to 15 to 20. That's what Boston does. That's what Boston did in game 1 when they took the lead in the third quarter and got it out to 15. That's what they did in game 2 when they again took that lead in the third quarter. That's what they did in, frankly, game 3 when they were down 12 and they came back and made it a 2-point game and had a chance to tie it and chance to win it at the end to get the sweep. That's what they did. Really, even game 4 was probably more back and forth, more evenly played. That was kind of the bad shooting game the Magic needed to win. That's what they did tonight in game 5. Tonight in game 5, yes, the Celtics couldn't hit threes and couldn't get threes or generate threes in the first half. But they got those threes in the second half, and they finally had the good shooting game that the Magic were always going to lose. And some of it is Orlando played good defense, and they made the shots. And again, you can't equate for, you can't compensate for, you can't deal with they're making contested shots, and we're missing open shots. That's been the season. That's been the entire season for the Orlando Magic. And at some point, the defense is going to break. As important, as good as defense is, as good as this team's defense can be, it can't function without a functioning offense. Not at this level, not with these stakes, not in this stage. That's been the problem. And again, like, I want to save off-season stuff for tomorrow. We're gonna mourn the end of the season tomorrow. Begin the autopsy. I've got my forceps ready to go. But we can't separate what this team needs from the results that we're seeing in these critical games. The Boston Celtics always knew they had this in. It was just a matter of time. And as happens in these closeout games, your will kind of leaves you. Your spirit kind of leaves you. You start to panic. And that's how these games become bad. It's like, was this a 31-point game? The score says so. It was. But it wasn't. But Boston's able to make it that way. And once you lose control of that rope against this Celtics team, it only gets faster. It only burns you more. The Magic had done such a good job throughout the series preventing that from happening, preventing those outbursts. But it finally happened. And Orlando had no answer. None whatsoever. They've never had an answer for something like this. And so a game like this was inevitable in this series. It just happened to be the one that closed it finally. We'll run through the box score. We'll talk about the final performances of the season from several Orlando Magic players. Begin to think about what that means for the future. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. I have to give a huge shout out and credit to the fans here at the TD Garden. Absolutely great playoff environment. I know it only gets more intense and bigger as you get deeper into the playoffs. TD Garden lived up to the billing in games 1, 2, and 5, just like I think the Kia Center fans lived up to the billing in game 3 and 4. So if you're looking to travel to Boston for the rest of the playoffs, Game Time is your ticket to be part of the arena. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I'm getting ready to hit my offseason, which means I'm going to be in the market for Orlando City tickets. The Orlando Solar Bears are in the South Division Finals in the ECHL playoffs now. We get 3 games against those hated Florida Everblades. If you want last-minute deals to any of those great events going on around Central Florida, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more at Game Time. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. For $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, let's dive into the final box score of the season as the Orlando Magic fall to the Boston Celtics 120-89. A lot of it's what you're going to expect. Just frankly, just not enough offense. And obviously, Paolo Banchero's extended absence in the third quarter, that was the game. Again, in a game you lose by 31, Paolo's minus 15, but a lot of that comes in the fourth quarter. It's hard. Like it's just hard. Like that play, those decisions, those fouls, it impacted the game in an immeasurable way. And it sucks. We can complain about the officiating. We can say, what we want to say about it. You can have your opinions on it. It happened, and the Magic failed to respond the right way to it. And look, some of that is they don't have the personnel to. If this happened to Jaylen Brown, which it did happen to Jaylen Brown in game 3, I believe, he missed a lot of time. Joe Mazzulla did not bring him back in until about 2 minutes left in the game. Kristaps Porzingis was in foul trouble early in the game. That was a huge factor for Orlando to take the lead and be able to attack the paint really effectively. They were able to kind of pick their guy and get fouls on him and put him in compromising positions. Everyone deals with foul trouble. It isn't just, the refs are in the bag for Boston. No. Teams deal with foul trouble. The difference is when Boston loses Jaylen Brown, Derek White slides over. The Celtics played the last 3 games of the series without Drew Holiday. But what happened? Peyton Pritchard slid over. Derek White filled in. Jaylen Brown filled in. Jason Tatum upped his game. And while I do agree with Jamal Mosley that at every point in this season, guys stepped up to help fill roles throughout the course of the game. The season, ultimately in the playoffs, nobody slid in. And frankly, the Magic don't have the players to do that. Now, obviously, like, Paolo is a huge piece of the puzzle. And, credit to Franz Wagner. Like, Franz Wagner probably had his best game of the series tonight in Game 5. He finished with 25 points, 10 for 22 shooting, 0 for 4 from 3, 5 for 5 from the foul line, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He did end up with 5 fouls as well, by the way, but he caught his 5th foul when the game was over. Franz made a lot of really nice plays. He was aggressive attacking the basket, hitting his mid-range shot, and frankly, just again, that mid-third quarter, having to carry that huge burden against this Celtics defense, you could just see him wear down. And we saw this last year too in the playoffs. We saw this last year in Game 7 as well. If there is a case for the Magic to go get another creator and go get another guy who can score, it's this. Paolo and Franz couldn't finish this series. They had so much weight and so much responsibility, they couldn't finish this series. Let's talk about Paolo's game, because Paolo had his worst game of the series. Before we even get to the fouls, he had his worst game of the series tonight. 19 points, 6 for 15 shooting, 2 for 4 from 3, both of them coming late in the game. 5 for 7 from the foul line. I don't think I mentioned Orlando missed, I think, 19 straight threes in this game. They made their the last 3 to end the first quarter from Gary Harris. Did not make another 3 till the beginning of the fourth quarter. Again, huge factor in this series. Huge factor. Paolo finished with 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 turnovers. Turnovers weren't a huge issue, but again, just such small margins. Turnovers ultimately do matter. A couple shot clock violations the Magic didn't want, because they have to get shots up, and there's a lot of guys afraid to shoot. I thought Paolo was short on a lot of shots. Thought he settled for a lot of shots. Missed some layups around the basket. More importantly, and I noticed this in Game 4 too, his defensive attention really left him. And look, there aren't a lot of weak spots in this Magic defense. He's going to have to learn. Teams are going to attack him on defense because he is the weak link on defense. Now, I don't think Paolo Banchero is a bad defender at all. I think he is a passable defender. Do I want him guarding Jason Tatum? Not frequently. Do I understand why the Magic hide him on weaker offensive players? Absolutely. He's guarding Al Horford most of the night. But the Magic do switch a lot. Ultimately, Paolo, though, was just a step off everywhere. And that's why he committed 2 fouls in the first half. He's not in the situation that he was in the third quarter if he's smarter with his fouling, if he's sharper with his rotations in the first half. This is just, to me, it just looked like fatigue. And again, that's not an excuse. He puts a lot of responsibility on himself. He has a lot of responsibility for this team. As long as they're playing, he's got to live up to the billing. This was a game that felt like he ran out of gas. And Franz eventually ran out of gas too. And when those two players aren't able to kind of generate offense, this team looks like it did back in January when they were really struggling, when they were at their lowest point of the season, when they're at their worst, when they were losing to Utah at home, when they were losing to Portland at home. That's what this team looked like. And again, like, they don't have Jalen Suggs. He would help a lot. He's the offensive burden because he can create a little bit. He's willing to shoot. He's willing to score, willing to attack. Mo Wagner would help. Mo Wagner is just a bucket. He's just a walking bucket. Jamal Mosley says it all the time. He falls out of bed and scores 10 points. The Magic needed those guys in this series, and they needed those guys not necessarily because they'd be able to take advantage of what Boston does, but just ease that burden. And that's going to be such a big thing we talk about this offseason, is finding guys that, A, they can trust to make passes to you, but can also just ease the burden, get them some easy shots. It's, you decrease your shooting, but you increase your efficiency because the quality of the shots you're getting are that much better. That's what Boston has. Again, like, you look at Boston, there's no weak link offensively, and everybody can attack the basket in some way or some fashion. Maybe not Kristaps Porzingis because he keeps settling for jumpers over smaller players. Al Horford isn't what he used to be, but all of their guards, all of their ball handlers aren't afraid to attack the basket and take a gap when it's there. The Magic struggle with that. They don't have those guys. They don't have those players. And again, like, this game, like, all those flaws are on display. That's why the Magic lost. Because when Paolo went out, Franz slid over and did what he needed to do, but there's no support system there. There's no support for that there. Wendell Carter, the only other Magic player in double figures with 12 points, did finish with 10 rebounds. A lot of respect for Wendell Carter's series. I know that the scoring and the shooting are not where anybody wants them to be. He finished with 5 for 10, 0 for 4 from 3. So that puts him at 5 for 6 on 2-point field goals, which I will take. Obviously, part of his appeal is that he can spread the floor. He went back to kind of Chicago 3-point shooting, his worst 3-point shooting of his tenure with the Magic. But Wendell Carter had an excellent series. The Magic defense does not work without Wendell Carter, and I thought that he was strong in this series once again. Really not a lot of else to say. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 8 points, 3 for 9 shooting, 2 for 7. He made a couple threes. That's what the Magic need. Got the volume up. I'm cool with the volume. The Magic need a guy that's going to take 7 threes a game. I think that is a big piece of it. But Kenny was never that guy, and he's never been that guy. Did not deliver the shooting the Magic needed in the end. Corey Joseph went scoreless, 0 for 5, 0 for 4 from 3. We all see the impact that he had. We'll debate the point guard issue next week at some point. But Corey Joseph obviously is not the level of player, as good as he is, as much as we all love him, not the level of player you need to compete with a team like the Celtics, certainly not a performance like this. Anthony Black, 8 points, 8 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds, but 3 for 10 shooting, 1 for 3 from 3. That 3 did come very late in the game. Anthony Black was super active on the offensive glass. I really love the energy that he played with, but again, with him, the energy's there, the defense is there, the offense and the confidence offensively especially just aren't there yet. And again, that's just such a huge hole, again, especially comparing directly to the team you're facing against, such a huge hole to not have guys who are confident offensively. The Magic should have been up by 15 at the half. Like the Magic should have been up by 10, 12 points throughout the first half with the way that they were playing defensively, the opportunities they were creating. Orlando could not take advantage of them. And that when you leave the door open against a team like the Celtics, they're not just going to open it. They're going to kick you out and slam the door behind you. They're going to evict you from the house. That's what the Celtics do to everybody. You can't let them do that. You got to lock the door, hold it tight. Don't let them in. Let them huff and puff and try and blow that house down. But the big bad wolf won this game. Not a lot of other scoring elsewhere. Jonathan Isaac, 5 points, 2 for 5, 0 for 2 from 3. Just the shooting's not there. Cole Anthony, 1 for 6, 0 for 4 from 3. Again, just missing that push offensively that the Magic need from him and need from their bench. Jason Tatum leads the Celtics with 35 points on 11 for 11 shooting from the foul line, 10 for 16 from the floor, 4 for 5 from 3, added 10 assists, 8 rebounds. Really strong game for him. Jaylen Brown with 23 points, 9 for 18 shooting, 2 for 4 from 3, 6 rebounds for him. Not a lot of scoring from the rest of the Celtics starters. Again, Orlando's defense did the job really, really well. But once the Celtics opened the dam, once the Celtics got through, their stars carried them to the end. And again, the Magic just did not have the will and the ability to answer them at the final buzzer. The Orlando Magic season has concluded. The Boston Celtics defeat the Magic 120-89 here in Game 5 at TD Garden. The Orlando Magic are back in action next season, next October, for the 2025-2026 season. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. I want to thank you all again for listening all season here on Locked On Magic. Truly appreciate all of you who listen, whether you're listening your first listen of the day, whether you're listening at some point in the afternoon, whether you're listening to me 2 weeks from now. I truly appreciate all of you who hang with us, hang with me here for Orlando Magic basketball. It's always, sometimes frustrating, sometimes glorifying, but always worth it in the end. We'll find that part out yet. But I truly appreciate all of you who make this Locked On Magic community so great and for sticking with us throughout the NBA season. You can, of course, follow me throughout the offseason, both here on Locked On Magic and on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast because we will still be going strong through the offseason at wherever you download podcasts, whether it's I've lost my thing, wherever you download podcasts to your podcast enabled listening device. I know that's the line everybody loves. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic if you want to see the John Corrales dance from the beginning of the episode. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to Locked On Magic, making it your first listen of the day, go check out the Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me, though. I want to thank you all again for joining me for the 2024-2025 Orlando Magic season. We'll be back tomorrow because we're going to chat all about the season, what went right, what went wrong, begin the autopsy on the 2025 Orlando Magic season. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Wright. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.